My peoples, what up? Okay, let's talk about it. The Fat Boys. R.I.P. to Prince Markie D. I got to be honest with you, I didn't know much about the Fat Boys at all. Like, they were like some cats. I tried to get into them maybe years back. Like, I heard one or two songs, and I was just like, And what's so ironic is that Prince Markie D had done an interview with Soren Baker, and I saw a little bit of it, and then that made me go, "Oh, okay, all right. I don't know anything about the Fat Boys like that, so let me try again and listen to some of their stuff." And I was just like, it's still not, doing anything for me. They did that whole "brr stick 'em" right in the beginning of the song, I think, called "Stick 'em," which has gone on to be used. "Brr stick 'em, ha ha ha, stick 'em." I remember who said that. Who was the one that put that in the line? I can't remember. Anyway, but the point is, Fat Boys, they were influential in the sense that yes, they were part of that second wave, and they helped put hip hop in the mainstream more and things like that. So I respect them in that sense. But man, I could not get into their music, man. Like Nas posted something on IG where he had the Fat Boy song, which I had, I think, heard once or twice or whatever, and there was the Fat Boys. That was probably the best song of theirs, honestly. Like, and even then, it was like I like the beat and that little chorus part, but the song as a whole is just not for me, man. I tried checking out a couple of Prince Markie D stuff, Still Tripping Out or Still Tipping Out or something like that. That was not it. The other one was Swing My Way. It was cool, but again, it's very much of its time. And I think that's my whole issue with the Fat Boys, to be honest with you. They are just very, very of their time. Like to me, their stuff did not age well at all. Like that's a perfect example of making stuff that is for its time period, and I'm sure a lot of people listened to it and they were probably a big hit with the casuals, but ain't nobody care. I mean, these guys had movies and commercials and shit like that. They were larger than life, from what I understand. I mean, I'm reading about them. They were huge, and no one talks about them. Ain't that some shit? I mean, this is why I don't care about Billboard and all this, like, oh, this person's got a movie, so you hating, they out here getting money. Who gives a shit, man? Get off the nuts. Like, that's all marketing bullshit. At the end of the day, the people that make the real hot shit, they're the ones that are gonna last. And the ones that made that gimmicky, casual-oriented music, ain't nobody gonna give a fuck. Okay? People are wouldn't even be a footnote in this history. And that's the funny and sad part about it all. Because Father Time doesn't respect casual gimmicks. That's just the reality of this shit, man. You know what I mean? Like, look at how Run DMC and even Whodini to a certain degree are much more known and respected than Fat Boys. Ain't nobody give a shit about the Fat Boys. And look, listen, I'm not here to dump on them. Like, honestly, like, they were before my time. They are pioneers. They have done, they paved the way in a sense, right? So I'm not gonna, disrespect their legacy necessarily, but I do think that they're a perfect example of how in every era there was always sort of casual, oriented stuff that might have been really popular, but once it's outside of that era and that sound, it's just it's forgotten. It's like nobody cares, right? And the real artists are the people that make that stuff that, yeah, like you might not get right away, but over time you're like, oh my god, that was so ill and stuff like that. And they're the ones that people still care about, right? Look, listen, man, in 2021, people care more about what rappers like Nas and Jay-Z and whatever CeeLo have to say about anything. They don't ask R&B groups. Look at the freaking interviews and stuff on the internet, and look at how all these politicians and stuff are trying to cozy up with rappers. Rappers. I'm old enough to remember when R&B was the biggest shit in the world, like in terms of black music. Okay? I'm 37 now. Damn, time flies. About, right? Like, I remember the 90s. In the 90s, the people that were making real, like, they were killing that Billboard shit, black people, were Whitney Houston and Boys to Men and shit like that, right? The R&B acts, right? They were the ones that were up there. Mariah Carey, right? They were making that music that was, like, going stupid diamond and stuff. And rap was just something that wasn't even really cracking the surface. I mean, it was bubbling, but it was very much looked at as like, oh, this is like maybe a fad, and even black people felt that way, right? And I've seen interviews where For example, when rap started to really sort of, do tracks with R&B and things like that with R&B artists, they did that because they wanted to get heard, right? Because R&B was the big thing, right? Even though rap was coming from the streets and also had its own little cachet. But the point is, R&B was the biggest thing at one point, right? Like even up until the late '90s, man. You look at Blackstreet, No Diggity. I mean, these people were doing hitting number one on Billboard regularly. But in 2021, do you care what Teddy Riley's opinion is on anything compared to Jay Z's opinion? That's all I'm saying. Like again, not to disrespect Teddy Riley because Teddy Riley, I love Teddy Riley. But all I'm trying to say is that the real artists, the edgy shit, is the stuff that lasts, right? That's the stuff that, yeah, at first people usually hate on, or they don't quite get, or it's a little bit, it's a little too dangerous, but over time people start to, come around to it. That's the stuff that people are interested in. That's the real longevity. And Fat Boys to me they were just too gimmicky and too comfortable. Like I mean, you listen to Wipeout, man, and clearly Wipeout is like their own version of Walk This Way. I saw the interview after when they mentioned it. I was like, yeah, I mean, I could have seen that shit a mile away. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, not for me, man. But one thing I will say about the Fat Boys that I do obviously respect is that the fact that they were funny and they weren't afraid to just be innocent and goofy and things like that. And look, listen, that's an energy that I think hip hop needs. I've always said that I was going to do a video about comedy and hip hop, and I'll probably do an extended one because I do think that hip hop got way too serious, especially when the gangster shit started coming in, man. Like, it got way, way too serious. I mean, there's always been an aspect of comedy and fun and, maybe even a little corn, whatever, that comes with hip hop, right? Because, again, hip hop is supposed to be fun. It doesn't matter whether you are a political preacher, a gangster, whatever. If there's no fun element to what you're doing, you're whack automatically. So there has to be fun. And of course, some people are more serious than they are fun, and some people are more fun than they are serious. And that's okay, right? I ain't got no problems with that. I love funny shit. You know what I mean? I'm a huge Lil B fan. You guys know this. You know what I mean? I've always said that Lil B is one of the greatest rappers of the last 10 years. And people didn't get it at the time when I was telling them, yo, this Lil B dude is on some other shit. And I think he's on some like real innovative shit. And one of the dopest rappers to actually kind of ever do it in a weird way in terms of the internet troll game and all that shit. People are like, oh, you don't know rap, all this stuff, right? Casual shit. And now over time, I think people are starting to realize that Lil B really did have that influence. But again, not all rap is bars and I'm in my Timbs and nigga we in the crack spot and Conway ass niggas like this and shit. Like that's not all of hip hop, right? Like there's a lot of sides to hip hop. That's what made hip hop so dope is that you could get into a Nas who was kicking that street shit, that intellectual shit, then you get into some fucking Redman who was on some like funny space shit, and then you could get into like Heavy D, Don't Curse, and he was just on some smooth lover, occasionally hilarious, positive vibes type shit. There's all these personalities, right? That's why it's important for everybody to do their own thing because it enriches you as an individual, right? As a personality, I got all those people in me, right? Like in terms of like their vibes. I'm more of a serious cat, I would say overall, but I love to laugh too, right? So that's why it's important to have all these different personalities, right? Comparing the Fat Boys, right? When I talk about some gimmicky sort of comedy shit, and you compare that to Heavy D. I've been listening to Heavy D, Don't Curse, a lot in the last couple of days. You should watch that video. I mean, that shit is pure genius, right? Like, the verses are fire, the video's fire, the whole shebang, it's funny. I mean, you watch something like that and you're just like, this rap shit is not even close, man. This new rap, like, no one in the new era is doing anything remotely that cool, right? That funny, that like charismatic. You watch that shit. It's like stuff like that that made hip hop really become that shit, especially for other black people like myself who are living outside of North America. We're looking at videos, of black people in New York or wherever, even in the South and shit. We're just like, yo, like, they doing it. You know what I mean? Like, we have pride in ourselves because we can see ourselves, right? Like, like these black folk are standing up and just being them in their own authentic spaces. So we're going to do the same thing. Like, fuck y'all. Like, what I'm saying? You can't hold us back. And that was such a cool energy to see, right? You see like CL Smooth and Kane and Coogee rap and just how everyone had their own different flow. And Pooba was nasty. They all had their completely different flows and personalities and vibes, but yet they all came together. And that's that brotherhood shit, right? It celebrates that blackness. You know what I mean? We love that shit, man. And like, it was a funny song, right? It's a funny video too. So things like that I think are important, right? In a game where everyone tries to sound the same because they're marketing to casuals, it's important that people obviously have some diversity. And I was saying that that to me is a perfect example of a song that's funny. That yes, it came out like 7 years after the Fat Boys and stuff, so it's a completely different era. But how that song to me, even though it's humorous, is much more timeless than the Fat Boy shit because that song wasn't aimed at casuals. You know what I'm saying? It was made for the street. Even funk, Heavy D says this funky beat was made for the streets. You know what I mean? Like it's a hip hop ass record. It's not made for the casual, right? It's a funny song. It's talking about cursing and things like that. But again, it's aimed at a hip hop audience. And I think that's the difference, right? Like when you have stuff that's aimed at a hip hop audience, that's gutter and street and sort of speaks to us, it's gonna last longer than these songs that like wipe out that were for Fat Boys and the Beach Boys. Yeah, that's a great actual pairing because they're both pop, right? But is anyone paying? Is anyone playing Wipeout in 2021? Does anyone give a shit about Wipeout? You know what I mean? Anyway, so that's what I've been listening to a lot, actually, a lot of Heavy D. And of course, Pop Smoke, RIP to Pop Smoke. When I was talking about Pop Smoke a couple of days ago, I had no idea he had even passed around this time. To be honest with you, I wasn't even thinking. It was just pure coincidence that I sort of made that video the day before his anniversary, 1 year anniversary of his death. And what a shame, man. I listen to that Scenario still, man. That Scenario and Dior record. Even I've gone back to a couple of them songs on, Meet the Woo 1 and Holcomb. Better Have Your Gun. Those are dope too. Those are pretty decent. But Scenario, man, that's my shit. That's my shit. Scenario and Dior, man, those are the records, So it's a shame, but so is life. Anyway, hope y'all have a good Sunday. Be good.